Welcome to PenGen's Inkwell podcast. My name is Jen Waters. I hope you enjoy my stories. Shamrocks was inspired by Bono of U2. The first time I saw U2 perform was in Hershey during high school in summer of 1992, when The Edge famously visited the grocery store. U2 was in town for practice for the week for the Zoo TV tour, so Hershey was on MTV, which was a big deal at the time. Also known as Paul David Hewson, Bono was quoted saying he doesn't believe in luck. Luckily, the shamrock is supposed to stand for the Trinity. According to the poem, faith or luck are not the most important, but only love. When I worked as a features writer at the Washington Times, Bono visited Washington, D.C. to raise money for the AIDS epidemic in Africa. The day that he went to President Bush to ask for money for the AIDS epidemic, there was a meeting at a hotel near the White House. Bono showed up a little late, looking half asleep, and he smiled at me and kissed my hand. I was one of about 15 journalists at the meeting. Bono kept yelling, asking us who was going to help him get the money for Africa. We all sat there, not sure what to say. He kept asking us if Condoleezza Rice or Colin Powell was going to be the most helpful. I tried raising my hand and suggesting that no one was really going to be helpful. I suggested that Bono revisit the life of British politician William Wilberforce, who abolished the slave trade, which led to abolishing slavery. Wilberforce died just 3 days after the slave trade was abolished in the British Parliament. I tried to explain to Bono that these things take time. It took Wilberforce 18 years. I think I got sworn at with the F word for saying that, but I was telling the truth. Anyhow, after the meeting was over, Bono was in a rush to go to the White House to meet with President George W. Bush. A few days before that, I remembered reading in Exodus about how Moses had to go back to the Pharaoh several times before the Pharaoh let the Hebrew people go. So, as the room was emptying, I told Bono that he had to be like Moses, who went back to the Pharaoh over and over until the Hebrew slaves were freed. Then he looked at me with a surprised reaction, telling me that just yesterday I told Colin Powell that he's like Moses. I said, no, it's you who's like Moses, not Colin Powell. He kept trying to insist that it was Colin Powell who was like Moses. Although Bono seemed annoyed at my idea, he considered that it was true. He walked down the hall backwards, staring at me on the way to get his ride to the White House. Then after he had a row with President Bush, there was a second meeting at St. John's Episcopal Church, where Bono walked into the room and tapped me on the arm and said, "Thank you for coming." I guess Bono thought that I had helped him in some productive way. The other press members tried to ask him why he was raising awareness and money for the AIDS epidemic in Africa with clergy members instead of Hollywood elite. He said that the clergy were his bodyguards. I was also there when he gave a speech in Philadelphia for a One campaign rally, where he got in the elevator afterwards and stood in the elevator corner, lamenting that he thought he gave the wrong speech and maybe screwed up the whole thing. I just stood there, thinking that it was fascinating to see such a world-changing man also be insecure. So we all have the ability to change the world, even if you doubt every now and then. I was also there when Bono spoke at the National Prayer Breakfast in front of King Abdullah II of Jordan. The National Prayer Breakfast is held in the Hilton's International Ballroom in Washington, D.C. When President George W. Bush walked in, no one made a sound. But when Bono entered the room to sit down, the crowd gasped. Among other things, he read the scripture that says that the sovereign Lord is on me because the Lord has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. I always like that scripture because there is more than one type of poverty. You can be financially poor, but you can also be poor in spirit. The Shamrocks rhyming poem is scored to Danny Boy, which of course is an Irish standard. So here's Shamrocks, and I hope it fills you with a lot of spirit.
My name is Lily and I'm an Irish Faerie, flitting through the sky where it's clear and airy. please let me tell you a limerick or two, while the grass is green and the sky is blue. Long, long ago in a land called Shamrocks was a big pink pig named Mr. Hancocks. His closest friend, or so it's been told, was a goat with a beard who sold fool's gold. His name was Basil, after the savoury herb. It tasted good and smelled superb. He set up shop near the rainbow's end, where luck and faith had a curious blend. Then there were the elves who ate 3-leaf clover, 4 meals a day, over and over. The Leprechaun Elves said clover made them lucky. Pig thought shamrock would surely taste yucky. Of course, Irish elves believed in luck, and so did the goat every time he was stuck. But Mr. Hancocks insisted on faith. He said, a lucky number could be the 8th. Why do you always insist on 7? You might as well count up to 11. Then Basil told him, why don't you grow wings? You say the most outrageous things. You're much too fat to ever fly. You'll need luck to reach the sky. The pig spoke to the goat wearing one leprechaun shoe. I can fly so much higher than you. So the elves kept eating leaf after leaf, believing clover was healthy as beef. As days went by, the goat and the pig teased the elves when they danced a jig. The elves liked to visit the fool's gold shop. They thought the morning was tippity-top. Leprechauns bought gold from the goat, pulling the beard that touched his throat. We'll sell gold to your highest bidder. If it's 24 carat, no one will consider. Let's put the gold in a big round pot and tie it to a sign with a very large knot. The elves acted like nothing but hooligans, dancing around and singing like fooligans. Then when most of the elves weren't listening, one tiny leprechaun's eyes were glistening. Basil, let me tell you the secret of the shamrock. A fairy told me once while I slept in a hammock. My name is Dizzy, from the family of McDoodles. I love Ireland oodles and oodles. Now the 3 little leaves on the end of the stem are faith, hope and love, an Irish gem. The shamrocks aren't a lucky charm, but a blessing that grows on a hillside farm. The elves think the shamrocks are magic. This attitude is nothing but tragic, because faith gives you the ability to believe, while hope gives you the strength to achieve, and love covers over a long list of wrong. The 3 together make you happy and strong. Elves in the village thought they found luck. They forgot about love at times to make a buck. But this is why the shamrocks taste so good. Faith, hope and love, now you've understood. In the meantime, Hancocks was practicing flight. He stood on the beams in the barn at night and imagined himself flying from the rafters, full of joy and fun and hearty laughters. But then Mr. Hancocks faltered on the beams, knowing the ground is farther than it seems. He was afraid that he might soon be baking. Fear overtook him and he felt forsaken. I really need wings more than I thought. The pig curled his tail a little distraught, and when the elves tried to sell him gold, the pig was quick with a scold fourfold. He rolled in the hay in the farmer's barn. My elves spin tales just like yarn. Just when Hancocks was about to give up, Basil stopped by with his measuring cup. He filled his empty green wheelbarrows with clover like straight steel arrows. He said, eat 2 cups of clover a day, and you'll be able to fly away. The pig said, I'm telling you in advance that I need more than luck and chance. I thought that faith would be enough, but dread and doubts are very tough. Basil said, a leprechaun told me a riddle. Luck and faith are second fiddle. You need hope with love to persevere. The answer is sparkling crystal clear. Eat the shamrocks each dinner and lunch. They'll fill you with love, I have a hunch. I've tried it myself and it works for sure. It's not just lies or phony Irish lore. 1 leaf has faith, your beloved motto, then hope and love with much vibrato. The pig said, the elves are nasty thieves. Faith, hope and love are scrumptious leaves. Hancocks gobbled up the shamrocks at once. No luck, Basil looked a little like a dunce. Soon as Hancocks ate the 3-leaf plant, he grew wings and soared with an Irish chant. Never think luck or faith is enough. Love and hope are the truest stuff. He flew from the highest rafter to the clouds, looking down at leprechaun crowds. So Basil stopped selling his gold to fools. Instead he sold Shamrocks like precious jewels. And Hancocks was famous as a pig with wings, who understood love was the wealth of kings. And I as a fairy shared the wisdom of the wise, like I did to the leprechaun with glistening eyes. May the luck of the Irish be with you every day. But luck is not enough, as St. Patrick would say. Faith, hope and love be with you till the end. May the road rise up to your feet at every bend.
This has been Pen Gen's Inkwell podcast. I wrote and performed all the original stories in the podcast. This podcast is produced by Eric Baines, who scored all the stories and poems in the series to original and public domain music. The podcast is associated with my blog of the same name, Pen Gen's Inkwell, which can be found on my website, jenwaters.com.